Have an experience with passion for Christ today as we preach the gospel of the kingdom and set the captives free, with God receiving the glory. Our host for the program today is Dr. Clement Okonedo.
Welcome to the program today. My name is Dr. Clement Okonedo, and this is Passion for Christ. I've titled today's message as God's Rest. Now, have you seen yourself striving or struggling in life? Then maybe you need God's rest. Have you seen that you have to depend more on yourself to achieve in life? Then maybe you need God's rest. Do you see that you lack peace with God or peace with your fellow men? Then maybe you need God's rest. If you go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 to 3, it says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array." So God was busy with the work of creation. And here it says that all of these things that God created, God had finished his work. And it says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. And it goes on further, it says, so on the seventh day, he rested from his work. So when God had finished his work of creation, he rested from his work. And it says, and God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So when God had finished all his work of creation, then he now rested. And so God is now inviting us to be part of that rest. If we go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 8, it says, Christ was slain before the foundation of the world. Why am I bringing this up? Because even before the world was created, Jesus Christ was slain. Jesus Christ was crucified even before the world was created. Now, that was something that happened in the spirit realm. So it took almost 4,000 years for that to now happen in the physical realm. You have to understand that things in the spirit realm tend to occur before they now actually manifest in the physical realm. So even before the world was created, Jesus Christ was slain. He was crucified. But it took 4,000 years for that to actually manifest in the physical realm. So why was he slain? Because God knew that man could possibly disobey him. And so God had a plan B. And the plan B was that if man disobeyed him and sinned, then there will be a redemptive process. And that redemptive process will be through Jesus Christ. So that was why, as part of the work of creation, God slain Jesus Christ before the foundation of the world, so that if man did sin, then there will be a way to restore him back. Now, like I said earlier, things in the spirit realm tend to precede things in the physical realm. Another good example, if you look at Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4, it says, for he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. So before the world was created, before the world was formed, God chose us in him. Okay? So he knew who we were before the world was created. Before you even came to this physical realm, God knew who you were. So he chose us in him. Now, if you're hearing this message today and you're a child of God, you can see that even though God chose you in him before the worlds were formed, before the world was created, it's almost 6,000 years now. So you see, that was something that God did before the world was formed in the spirit realm. And now it takes almost 6,000 years for you now to be part of Jesus Christ. So again, like I said earlier, things in the spirit realm tend to precede things in the physical realm. So going back to God's rest, so part of what God did when he was creating the world was that Jesus Christ was slain before the creation of the world. And after God had finished all his work of creation, what did he do? He rested. God rested. And so God is inviting us to that rest. And part of the invitation of that rest was what he extended to the children of Israel. If you go to Exodus chapter 20, look at Exodus chapter 20 and go to verse 8. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, it says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Now, this is what it entails. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your man servant or maid servant, nor your animals, nor your alien within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and made it holy. So God wanted the children of Israel to experience his rest. He says for 6 days they will do their work, but on the seventh day they will not labor. They will not be involved in any kind of work. In other words, they will not depend completely on God on that day. And that is God's rest. That is the same rest that God is inviting you today as you hear this message. Now, God also invited the children of Israel to another kind of rest. And this was rest from their enemies. If you go to Deuteronomy chapter 12 verse 10, it says, "But you shall cross," this was Moses now speaking to the children of Israel. It says, "But you shall cross the Jordan and settle in the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and he will give you rest from all your enemies around you, so you will live in safety." So God was inviting the children of Israel into the promised land to give them rest from their enemies. Now, the generation that Moses spoke this to disobeyed. They heard this message, but they never received it. It was never mixed with faith, and so they disobeyed God. Now, Joshua's generation, they were the ones who were able to enter into the promised land. So what am I talking about today? I'm talking about God's rest. God is inviting you to his rest. You may be struggling, you may be striving, you may be trying to do things in your effort. And God says, no, just depend upon me to sustain you. That is what God's rest is all about. So, like I said, you may be struggling today, and God is inviting you to his rest. You may be struggling in your health, in your finances, in your marriage, in your relationships, in your job, even in your family, in your education. You may be in the area of religion, whatever it is, you may be struggling. And God is inviting you to his rest. It's a place of comfort. It's a place where God sustains you. It's a place where you do not depend upon yourself anymore, but rather you depend on God for resources. If you go to Matthew chapter 11, verse 8, it says, "Come unto me, all of you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give unto you rest." So if you're struggling today, God is inviting you to that place of rest. He says, "Take upon my yoke and learn from me." This is Jesus speaking now. He said, "Take upon my yoke and learn from him." He says, "For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So the yoke that Jesus places on us is very easy and light. He doesn't place too much expectation on us. There's so much that the world places on us. And because of that, we have to struggle and we have to strive. And God is saying, no, that is not the way. God does not place too much on us. He doesn't even place anything on us. He wants us to depend upon him, to rely upon him. And so that is that rest that God is inviting you today. That is that place that Jesus is saying, "Come unto me, all of you who labor and are heavy laden, and I shall give unto you rest." So that is that place that Jesus is inviting us to. So Joshua was able to take the children of Israel to the promised land, where they'll be rested from their enemies. There is a greater than Joshua today. There's someone who is greater than Joshua today, and his name is Jesus, and he's inviting you to God's rest. Okay? He's inviting you to God's rest. If you look at Psalm 23, it says, "The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures." So the Lord is my shepherd. And then he makes you, he's your shepherd. If you're a child of God today, Jesus Christ is your shepherd. And because he's your shepherd, you do not have to depend upon yourself. You depend upon him for resources. Psalm 55 verse 22 says, "Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you." Again, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. God never designed for you to depend on yourself. God designed you to depend on him. That's the original design. But somewhere along the line, things have gotten wrong. And so we tend to depend upon ourselves and for sustenance. And so a lot of things now go wrong. And so God is trying to get you back to the original design. The original design is that you depend on God. That's why Psalm 55 verse 22 says, "Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you." If you go to now